I'm a socialist, and I don't know if we're speaking about our organization. I'm with Struggles United, Luchas Unidas. We'll talk a little bit, I guess, a bit more about specifically what our org does. But in general, socialism is a lot of a combination of some of the principles that have been discussed already. In terms of being anti-state, we are against a capitalist state. We're against the state that uses economics and manipulation of our labor and our well-being, and uses racism, sexism, homophobia, and disability discrimination in order to make profit. And that profit is in turn used to exploit us even more. So that's something that we're against. In terms of to an end, we want to have a society that is communist. However, we believe that socialism is the correct methodology towards having a communist society. But that also means the people who are oppressed are the people who have the most to gain by taking power. And that doesn't mean that everyone deserves to get hurt or injured who doesn't agree with us. But it does mean that the capitalists are using exploitation of our labor, not just in the United States, but in other countries, in order to keep us oppressed. And by doing that, they're going to have the guns and the weapons in order to continue and maintain that oppression. Which means one of the biggest weapons that we have is organization internationally with groups who are oppressed, as workers especially. We are the ones who control the society. Our labor is what controls the society and makes society run. And without it, they have nothing. We look at the strikes in Chicago today. One of the reasons why it's so powerful is because everyone said that they're going to just stop working. And that's because the conditions that they're working on are so oppressive. But that's only a step towards gaining power. Having a strike is a method. Direct action is a method. But the end is having the people who are oppressed have the most power in controlling society. And why is that? Why do we need what's called the dictatorship of the proletariat, of workers being the ones who are in control? That's because the capitalists have an international network of oppression to stop us from having control. Even though it's at our hands, it's at our fingertips every day that we work, every day that we purchase. We are the ones that have the power ultimately. But they are going to always try to come back and take it away from us, kill us, annihilate us, if not through just weapons like we saw with South Africa and the police killing the 39 miners, but with starvation, with the tickets, the impounds. They use the state as a means to control us economically. And so as a result of that, it's important for us to realize that even as though oppression is never good, and at the same time, the majority of the world needs to be organized collectively in order to stop the oppression of the capitalist class so that we can ultimately have control by the people who are oppressed. And so what do we call for? What is Marx called for, and Lenin and various other philosophers who we study, and Trotsky? What have they all called for? They've called for a transitional program to the permanent revolution. And part of that in the United States could mean a workers' party. One where a party is controlled by the principles. So we decide that we want public education for all, union jobs for all, no one is illegal, stopping racist and homosexual or attacks against the LGBTQ community, attacks on the disabled, like we see with the police and the death of Kelly Thomas. Police brutality is just a method to keep people in control. But a workers' party organized on principle, on the things that we all want and that we believe, so that we can start to maintain power as a group, as workers, as people who are oppressed, centralize that power, and then control our environment to a state that is controlled by the workers. The state is a body of governance. It's not necessary, and they use the police to do so. But what if instead of the cops who are controlled by the capitalists trying to ticket everybody and foreclose on people's homes, it's controlled by people who are like you and I, who want our life to run in a way that's comfortable, that's safe, that we decide collectively, that we have direct democracy where everyone has a right to vote and everyone has a right to make a decision. And where women are at the front of the struggle, continue to be at the front of the struggle. And one of the ways is that because women have to do so much unpaid labor, and already in the United States get paid 77 cents on the dollar that men do. So these are methods that they use in order to control it. But the way that we're going to win is by organizing workers and workers' power, organizing with the oppressed groups, not saying that nonviolence is the only method of organizing people, but keeping open the methods that need to be used for workers in order to not just take control, to maintain control, and not organizing and capitulating with the union bureaucracy to the capitalists so that they can maintain power and that we can continue to stay in the same situation that we've always been. As sister over here said, voting. Voting does not work if you're continuing to vote in the same type of people who are oppressing you. Voting works when everyone has a right to change the way that the system is run. That's when that works. So, in closing, socialism is the best methodology towards having a workers-controlled revolution, a permanent revolution, where all the people and workers of the world who are oppressed have the means to control society and make our society the best way that we want it.
Emma, before you start my time, can I point out that I brought snacks, and the snacks can be passed out to the, and I also brought water, and the water can be, because it's going to get hot today. And
I will give a 2-minute and a 1-minute mark.
And are we also having a 3-minute or something later on to talk about how to get there?
Ask a question.
Okay, so I just wanted to, I'm going to that now. Okay. Go now?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to start with some definitions, because so many people, those assholes we call the 1% have stolen our language from us. We can't even talk amongst ourselves because our language is so distorted. So what the hell does anarchism mean? What the hell does capitalism mean? What does socialism mean? What's Marxism? What's communism? Okay? All these terms have been badly distorted. Anarchism, as Jessica says, is not people running down streets throwing trash cans through storefront windows. Okay? And she did a beautiful job of defining it. Marxism and communism are not what the Soviet Union, Mao's China, or even Castro's Cuba had. That's not what Marxism is what Marx wrote about. If you want to know what Marxism is, read Marx. And I'll talk about it more here. So the first thing we have to do, and socialism. Socialism is not what the Eastern Bloc communist, the Eastern Bloc, Stalin's Russia had, and it's also not what's in Scandinavian countries, Sweden and so on. What Sweden has, that's capitalism with a few social programs. That's capitalism. And so hopefully, as we talk today, some of these terms will reach some sort of definitions. We're having a discussion. There are socialists, there are communists, there are anarchists here. I'm going to voice that these groups, if we're going to bring down those assholes, if we have a ghost of a chance of wrestling this world out of their hands, we need to work together. The last thing in the world we need to do is be condemning each other or talking about mine is the only possible solution. Don't go with these people. They're going to go ahead and lead you down the blind alley. That's the last thing we need. We need to be able to work together, and while we're working together, we need to form respect and compassion for one another so that after we bring down the capitalist state, we can go ahead and cooperate with one another in a much better world and work with different solutions to see what's going to work. Marx himself talked very little about what it would be like after we brought down capitalism. He really thought that the communities at that time needed to reach those conclusions for themselves, that it was wrong to go ahead and to tell them how they needed to act. I personally do think that it could be helpful to give them some ideas, but only ideas, nothing written in stone, no gospel, but some possible directions that they might want to pursue. Marxism, Communism, Socialism. Marx talks about a capitalist state. He talks about smashing the capitalist state and putting in its place something strong enough not to let them come back and crush us. The people in Cuba that went to Florida are still trying to get back. It's been 60 years. These people aren't going to give up nicely after we take all their shit away. He talks about building something that's strong enough not to let them smash us. He called that socialism. From there, he talked about it growing into a state, or not a state, rather, a community or group of communities, very much what Jessica's talking about where the state, in fact, would completely disappear. I'm going to quote from Lenin right now. We set ourselves the ultimate aim of abolishing the state, all organization and systematic violence, all use of violence against people in general. That comes from a book called State and Revolution that was written in 1917. This wasn't written really early. This was written in 1917 during the revolution. He also, after this, he goes on talking about to create, and when he says violence, he's talking about oppression. He's not talking about going and beating you up. He's talking about forcing you to do things that you wouldn't want to do. He then talks about forcing those assholes not to come back and beat the hell out of us. So he talks about creating something that would force them not to beat the hell out of us. And it may take generations, but little by little to abolish the state in general. Thank you. I was talking to Stephanie, I don't know if she's here right now, I was talking to Stephanie a couple weeks ago, and she was saying, I was using bottom and top, and she was saying, as long as I hear bottom, I feel uncomfortable. The kind of organization that Marx talks about is not with the masses at the bottom. The masses are at the top. The organizers, the coordinators are at the bottom. Anybody that's in a management, organizational, coordinational spot, they are our servants. If we let them earn more or have more privilege than us, we've already lost. What I am going to say, and I'm running out of time, what I am going to say is I think it's very important that the Marxists and the anarchists form a very tight relationship so that after the revolution, we and they can work together. We can send liaisons there, they can send liaisons here. We can each see problems that the others may not see in their own stuff. I would very much like to see them here. In closing, I want to say, and this may just be me, that I envision a society where all of us do not get up in the morning thinking about how much we're going to make so that we can get more shit, more cars, more fancy clothes. What wakes me up in the morning is how I can contribute to the community. If being productive, being creative is what gets us up. If we all get the same stuff, to each according to their need, from each according to their ability, if we all get the same stuff, if we start judging each other by how much we're doing, a lazy, idle person, that's seen as a disability, not as somebody who's being abusive. If they're just sitting there, we need to nurture them so that they can enjoy. Am I through?
My name is Kimberly, and I consider myself a Marxist revolutionary. Marxism is a philosophy and a social science, and communism is the goal of Marxism. So Marxism can be used by revolutionaries to understand the stage of development of the class struggle and to provide a guide of what to do.